Hello guys and welcome to the video number 1 of the week number 9. Hope everything is good on your side. I hope the results of the evaluation of the test number 1 are good. Hopefully it was not too difficult. Well, the idea of this test is like to sort of verify that we're able to deal with some of the things that we have managed throughout the semester. Well, they're always like that. Yes, they're always a bit challenging. I don't know the grades yet because I am actually doing this video in the same week that I am applying the test. So I guess we will have to wait and see, right? Very well, guys. So as usual, I would like to share with you a really short poem today, but it's full of meaning. This is a poem, by the poet Philodemus, or Philodemus. I'm not really sure what is the pronunciation. It's quite old. This guy is from 140 before Christ. Yes, from the classical empires of the East and the West, which makes it quite old. This short poem is called "Make the Bed Lamp Tipsy with Oil." That is the name, so it's a little bit like make the lamp that is beside your bed drunk somehow with oil. You know that antique lamps, when there was not electricity, they burned based on oil. That is the way they illuminated. So it was like put a lot of oil into your bed lamp. Make the bed lamp tipsy with oil is the silent confidant of things we seldom dare to speak of. Then let it go. There are times when the god Eros wants no living witness. Close the door tight. Then let the bed, the lover's friend, teach us the rest of Aphrodite's secrets. That's it, something really short and it may be a little bit cryptic if you read it quickly. That's basically like put a lot of oil into your lamp. It's the only one who can share certain secrets. Of course, we're talking about secrets of lovers, secrets of conversations at night, secret of let's say contact of bodies, right? But even then, that silent witness that is the lamp sometimes requires to be silent, sometimes requires to be blind, no? And it is in matters of love, in let's say in sexual matters, because here in this part in which it says the god Eros wants not living witness, right? Remember that Eros is the god of love and of course of sexuality, reproduction, etc. So basically, just do your things in the dark. Really nice because as I mentioned, it's really old, and even then, like, we're able to get to know certain things about human interaction. Well, guys, today we're going to start with the Romantic period, which is quite important. I mean, all of the periods that we have dealt with are really important, but this one in particular have a lot of features, and let's say that has affected us in many different ways, and it has repercussions as many of the other periods, but especially this one in entertainment, in films and movies, in soap operas, a lot of different things, right? So if you can be so nice and go to the slide 110, you will see the Romantic period that, again, just like in the previous part, it had place in two different moments. First of all, in England in 1785, more or less until 1830, and in America in 1800 until 1860. Now, if you take a look at the times in which the Romantic period arrived into America, and if you compare it with the previous ones, let's say British colonialism, classical period, you will see that it takes less years, right? In the previous ones, it was almost a century, a little less than a century. Here we're talking about a couple of years. So it means that communication was better, that technologies for communication were more efficient, and well, all these different things, right? Now, I want you to think about this. Yes, remember that we discussed in our previous lessons that every new period was some sort of a contestation, an opposition, a contradiction of the previous period, right? We already mentioned about, let's say, organization and Middle English versus complete chaos in Anglo-Saxon, and we discussed, for example, of human-centered relationship versus, in Renaissance I mean, versus God-centered universe in the Middle English and things like that. So try to remember neoclassical. Remember, it was all about reason. It was all about restraint, control, order, right? So that was neoclassical. So what do you imagine that it could be the Romantic period, right? Well, so basically the train of thought was more or less like this. Reason was a failure. Let's say the extreme logic took us as human beings by horrible paths. Yes, that was the reasoning of the Romantics, I mean. Yes, and let's think about an example that is not necessarily of the time, but it's in the future, right? But nevertheless expresses what I think I want to tell you about the Romantic period, right? And think about Hitler and Nazism and his behavior and his techniques and his methodology, right? So I want you to think about this. Were the actions by Hitler logical? Were they logical? He had a problem, yes, and problem was the Jewish people, yes, taking many of their, let's say, as they perceived they were their jobs, right? Like, let's say, why Jewish people is supposed to have jobs and not German ones, controlling the economy, somehow having a lot of money, let's say, well, in his perception, right? Having control of loans, having control of different important, let's say, positions in the government or social positions or things like that, and even getting married with German girls, right? So that was his problem. I am oversimplifying a lot, but let's say that was his problem. Well, is it logical that the best way to get rid of this problem was killing everybody, sort of putting them in concentration camps? If money was a problem, well, he took money from them. He took art from them, paintings, jewels, houses, properties, everything else. So is it logical? Well, yes. We have to, let's say, to be horrified to the answer, because true, I mean, you have a problem, and he basically deal with that as if people were a plague, something that he could just simply eliminate, right? And unfortunately, the answer to, is it logical? Sure, it is logical. It was effective? Sure, it was very effective. Like, Germany was able to become somehow as an empire of all times, and was the owner on most of Europe and even some other ultramarine territories. And sure, it was pretty successful. But was it moral? Was it ethical? Was it good? And there is where we can say, by no mistake, no, it wasn't ethical at all. Yes, and it wasn't good, and it wasn't acceptable, and we shouldn't permit that to happen again anymore. Never again, right? So basically, this is what the Romantics were trying to say. All this restraint, all this reasoning, all this logic made us call human beings. They sort of transform us into calculating and cold entities without a heart, right? So we're going to do the complete opposite to it. Yes, what we're going to do is to let our emotions run unchecked, no control, no restraint. We are going to leave our emotions do their biddings. We're going to express what we feel. We are going to let go. Yes, let's abandon this idea of cold logic and intellectualism. And sure, like we can be smart and we can be somehow use reason at some point, but we are going to have a complete exacerbation of emotion, right? So that is like the most important part of the Romantic period. Emotions gone unchecked, exacerbation of emotions, right? But well, this seems to be pretty good apparently for some, right? But I want to give you some seconds to think about emotions. Yes? Make a list of how many emotions can you name, right? What are these emotions that comes to your mind? Try to make a list, as many as you can think of. Yes, human emotions. What I'm asking you to do this. Why? Because and hopefully after this I will be really emphatic on this. Hopefully you after this lesson start using the word romantic more carefully. Yes, because people use it really badly. People use it just in an indiscriminate way that is reductionist, that it reduces it to a very small part of what is romanticism. So next time that you're going to say, stop romanticizing, dejen de romantizar, please think about what is romanticizing, and see if it's going to be, let's say, close to what you mean or not. So I was telling you, right? Emotions. So think about emotions. Okay, happiness, fine. Bliss, gladness. Okay. What else? Think about any other positive emotion. Okay, so then think about positive emotions. Think about negative emotions. Okay, depression, horror, sadness, let's say disdain, frustration, anger, any of those other things. Just make that exercise, and hopefully over there in your house you can think about many of the other emotions. In conclusion, again, just think about them or make a list of emotions, and you will find that the human being is full of negative emotions. Yes, let's say that more than the positive ones that we already mentioned about, like being in love, or being somehow happy, or experiencing joy, or experiencing pleasure, right? We find a much more ample, let's say, range of negative emotions. And what is it that the Romantic period proposes? To let go of those emotions, positive and negative, but now we know that most of them are negative, right? So in Romanticism, you do not feel sad. You feel completely fucked up, right? You feel depressed, completely blue, without any hope of acquiring any idea or any positive idea, right? So that is my point. Now, if you have, let's say, a regular emotion, the romantics are going to magnify it. Yes, so if you feel happy somehow, well, it's going to be maximized and multiplied in joy, ecstasy, and all these different things, right? But again, as I mentioned before, human being is full of more somehow negative than positive emotions, and that is what we are going to see, that in many cases we are going to see a magnified melancholy. We're going to see a magnified nostalgia. Well, all these different things that are, let's say, trademark of the romantic period. So this idea that someone romantic is someone who brings you flowers and opens the door for you or something like that. Well, that's being polite. Maybe at some point it can be romantic. Yes, if it's the exacerbation of your education or your politeness or something like that. Yes, okay, probably you can call that romantic. But ironically, somebody who kills another person, yes, because he felt he was offended by him or her, and his anger like flew and flowed freely without restraint, and so this person just killed that other guy. Well, technically, that is also a romantic person. Yes, I mean in terms of literary romanticism, because that person let his emotion overtook him and sort of just acted without restraint or control, and he killed somebody else. Yes, and somebody who is really depressed all this time and thinking about contemplating maybe suicide or contemplating his better years, even if he's not thinking about taking his own life or her own life. Well, that is also a romantic person. Yes, in terms of literary romanticism. If there's somebody who is, let's say, having a lot of sexual intercourse all the time, and looking for sexual partners, and I don't know, participating in orgies or participating in, let's say, unorthodox sexual practices, well, that is also a romantic person. Yes, in terms of literary romanticism, because he's maintaining his emotions and his desires unchecked, just letting them flow, and acting just in, let's say, in favor of his or her own pleasure, right? That is also romantic. If there is a person who gets drunk all the time, every day, since morning until night, or I don't know, 2 or 3 days in a row, and he doesn't socially behave very good until according to the parameters of behavior, of politeness and all these different things. Well, that drunkard is also a romantic character, right? Because he's leaving his emotions and his desires and his whims unchecked. Yes. So hopefully, with all these 3 or 4 examples that I just gave you of non-orthodox romantic behavior, we'll see that there are much more, let's say, manifestations of non-traditional romanticism in this sort of time, right? So please, when you're going to use the word romantic, oh, so romantic, well, think about it clearly, right? And again, if you're going to use this word romanticize, well, make sure to use it properly. Yes, because probably you're not meaning necessarily that romanticizing something bad, it is making it good. No, sometimes it can be that way, and it is actually romantic. Yes, at some point, a killing, raping, let's say, an inebriated behavior, self-destructive action is romantic. Okay, think about that. Okay, so if we take a look at some of the information that we have over there, let's say that this movement sort of provoked an expansion, almost an explosion of literary productions, right? Because imagination and feeling and emotion were praised over logic, so nobody needed any restraint anymore. Let's say our intuition went a little bit over science, not necessarily on the side of underappreciating science. No, not really. It was probably the possibility of imagining new things. Not everything required to be like so logical and so scientifically explained, so that gave room for imagination, right? So uh, let's say that all these movies in which there are incredible explosions and I don't know, cars who defy the sense of gravity, and these heroes that after an explosion they just uh, uh, sort of clean a little bit their shoulders and they are okay. Well, they are somehow, not exactly, but somehow they are romantic, yes, because they are sort of praising entertainment and emotion and thrilling and making a connection with the spectator rather than being somehow close to science or to a logical thing, right? You know, that if somebody suffers an accident or an explosion like the ones in the movies, like they would die in real life, right? So this romanticism gave a little bit way of imagination, right? Now, also, let's say that literature emphasized on flexibility somehow. Yes, they were not so monothemes like in the previous periods. Yes, we could talk about many different things, not only one thing. Um, let's say that the plots were a little bit more fast moving, complex, and let's say it was more important to generate some sort of proximity with the reader than actually maintaining a format or explaining something logically. Also, this allowed the combination of different genres. Until here, let's say that we have genres that were very fixed. It was either a comedy, it was either a hero story, it was a love story, it was either a battle story, it was either a military story, right? And everything was very self-contained and it was really independent. So starting here, again, not the first time, but let's say that the period facilitated this, it was possible to combine these genres, right? So we were able to find over here, for example, tragic comedies, yes, which is almost an oxymoron, right? Like being able to combine stories that are tragic tragedies where people die, where people suffer, where characters have really a bad time, and combining that with humor. Yes, you're not supposed to laugh about tragical things. You're not supposed to laugh in the face of death, right? Well, starting the Romantic period, we were able to do that, and of course, that gave room to something we know as black humor now, or dark humor, in which you make fun things of things that are not supposed to be laughed out. Well, that's something that is important. Again, doesn't mean that black humor was invented in the Romantic period. No, it might be impossible to track that down exactly, but let's say that it was a period in which it was possible to sort of find this in more abundance, right? Also remember that we were talking about in the neoclassical period how everything was very controlled, everything was in a format, everything was supposed to, in poetry, in prose, in novels, in tales, it was supposed to be pretty organized, and all the let's say the literary works of the time were very uniform. They follow certain rules. They normally respected certain parameters. Well, in the Romantic period, they say, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to tolerate fixed classical conventions. No. We are going to play a little bit with time, place, and action. Probably we can combine them. We're going to start telling stories that are in chronological disorder somehow. That we're going to find something first in the past, in the present, and then we will go back to the past, and we will have flashbacks and flash forwards and all these different things. And there was something important in poetry that was the blank verse. Let's say something that has survived to our days, and is this poetry. Again, I'm going to minimize the concept, that doesn't rhyme, that doesn't necessarily have a number of syllables or words, that is not so worried about metric, that not necessarily deals with musicality, right? So this opened, let's say, the possibility of many more people to go and try poetry, right? Because not everybody, I mean, can write a Shakespearean sonnet, right? I mean, if you sit down and try to write that one of those, well, maybe you do it, and the result follows the rules, but it's horrible. Or maybe you're very talented and you have more or less a good result, but well, that sort of limits the amount of people who can try writing poetry. Now, with this opening, more people were able to try poetry. Of course, this also allowed somehow that we have more poetry that sucked, right? Because if you didn't have any rules or parameters, and if everybody could write a poem, that's a possibility, right? It's like when you make everybody able to sing with autotune, so you may find really good things, and then you really find crappy things, right? But well, that's let's say the dynamic of times. So this is a little bit of what happened in the first part of the Romantic period. We're going to finish the video over here, but just think about that. Think about the fountain of emotions that we have of human beings. How many of them are positive? How many of them are a little bit negative? And if we're going to define the Romantic period in an expression, it will be the exacerbation of emotions running unchecked. Okay? Good. Thank you very much. See you then on the next video. Thanks a lot. Bye bye and hugs.